So that brings me to another story. Do you mind telling a bit of a story? You overheard a conversation between Steven Tyler one time and Tommy Lee.
Yes, I did. They were
And
talking
what was
because,
that conversation? I want people to hear that.
well, it's pretty funny because we were sitting in the lounge and they were talking about, because both of them like were on the wagon at that time. None of them were drinking or doing any drugs. So but they still wanted to keep their bad boy image. So they were talking about, they knew that there was a motorcycle cop stopped somewhere. And so they wanted to have that. I think Tommy had a pit bull or something. They're going to put like a Motley Crue T-shirt on one of the pit bulls and something, an Aerosmith thing on something. They purposely speed by this motorcycle cop and have a camera caught there so that and they were going. I don't think they ever did this, but they were talking. It's just interesting. They're sitting there listening to him talking about this scheme how they're going to get this so they could have like a bad boy thing where they got stopped by the cops and somebody got a picture of them,
I know it's amazing, and the people use the press to their own advantage. They criticize the press, but they use it for their own publicity all the time.
All the time, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And okay, now David Lee Roth, you sang on his album, the one that was done in Vancouver. I remember he had a song called "Sensible Shoes." What was the big hit off of that album?
I think it was a Little Ain't Enough. It was. I think that was it sounded very much like Van Halen, actually. Yeah.
That whole album did. He had Joe Satriani in the band or something, didn't he?
And he had Jason Becker, who is a legendary guitar player who ended up getting some kind of a weird illness and it
wasn't Joe Satriani then?
No, not that. It was this other young kid who was an amazing guitar player. But ended up. I think a couple of tunes off that album ended up being, and they put together a special compilation album with a bunch of tracks from famous people that he played with, and David Lee Roth contributed a couple of the tracks from the record I played with on him, and it was Jason Becker, I think.
I found it absolutely remarkable, the story with David Lee Roth. He decides to stay at the Nelson Place Hotel in downtown Vancouver, which is one of the biggest dive hotels you could ever imagine at the time. Because in the basement was a strip club, and he loved strip clubs. Yeah. So he rented 2 rooms upstairs. And in the middle of the night, all of a sudden they hear this, and it's David Lee Roth with a chainsaw cutting the wall out between the 2 rooms so he could turn it into a suite.
Yeah, he did. He was a character, but he was wonderful. He was absolutely wonderful. One of the more fun characters to work with. He was really animated, and a lot of the guys some of the Bon Jovi, of course, we did do some background stuff together. He was a hands-on guy, but David Lee Roth was really hands-on and a real character, and it was a real pleasure to work with. He was like into trying different types of things, and of course he had his wall because he loved mountain climbing. So he had Little Mountain Sound was famous for its loading bay, which had very high walls. So he actually had his rock climbing wall set up in the loading bay, which they also used for the drum sound. And he'd go in there, and of course, there was wafts of. He liked the ganja, so there's lots of. But a great character. He was very, very, and he'd get in there if we had some gang singing stuff. Like a lot of the lead vocals, sometimes you wouldn't see the singer around. Like they wouldn't be around while we're doing background parts.
A lot of times, some of those lead singers didn't know how to sing backup parts. They had a very wonderful character voice, but they didn't know how to sing harmonies.
I have to tell, there's a funny story, but I'm not going to say what band it was, but it's pretty funny because we're sitting in the studio and the lead singer comes to sing with me at the time. I think I was just in on that session. So I'm singing and Bob comes on the intercom, on the headphone mic.
Bob Rock.
Rock, and he says, I can't remember what his name. Well, I'm not going to mention his name anyway. He says, do you think you could just sing falsetto with Mark? And he goes, what the fuck is a falsetto? He didn't even know. He didn't even know, excuse my French, but it was just, he didn't know what a falsetto was. I mean, it's like, and you're going, okay.
Was that the same session where he ended up he was put on a forced break to save his voice? Was that the same session?
No, not this guy.
No,
this guy's
okay.
No. And then there was all kinds of different guys. You walk in the studio and there's one guy, I don't know, I guess he couldn't do his lead vocals without watching porno. It's like just weird stuff sometimes. It's like you go, I mean, I was in the studio. I mean, back then, you like guys like Bob Rock and Mike Fraser, all these amazing producer engineers, they all really paid their dues doing commercials and playing, a lot of times with jingles, they do huge productions with symphony orchestras and the whole thing. So they really learned how to develop their tools. And the same with us. We were in there singing, almost every day of the week singing. And so a lot of these bands, recording acts, they come in, and of course they only do an album every 2 years or whatever it is. So they wouldn't have that, they wouldn't have their studio chops would be, be not necessarily there. Some of them,
of course. Yeah. Well, they're busy on the road and swapping out parts. So yada, yada.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Check out our other vignettes and full episodes from a wide variety of guests for more great content. Please like, share, and subscribe, and become a member at socialenergypresents.com to access premium content and earn valuable energy points just for watching.